The afternoon sun hung heavy over the manicured lawns of the Sterling estate, or at least what everyone believed was the Sterling estate. My father, Arthur, was celebrating his 70th birthday, and the air was thick with the smell of expensive charcoal and the forced laughter of 40 relatives who only showed up for the free bar. I sat at a small, wobbly table near the edge of the patio, nursing a lukewarm soda and watching the golden child of the family, my older brother Julian, hold court by the infinity pool. Before we continue, if you've ever been the black sheep who ended up winning, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of survivors. To my family, I was Elena, the government desk warrior who probably spent her days filing TPS reports and eating sad salads in a cubicle. They saw my old truck and my modest clothes as signs of a stagnant career, never realizing that my doctorate in environmental engineering wasn't a hobby, it was the foundation of a global empire. Julian, meanwhile, was regaling Aunt Mildred with tales of his latest revolutionary marketing firm, his fourth business in 5 years. He had the entrepreneurial spirit, they said, while I just had stability. I watched him, knowing his consultancy was drowning in debt, while he sipped vintage scotch on our father's dime. The centerpiece of the property wasn't the main house, but the elegant guest residence I'd built 3 years ago. It was a masterpiece of sustainable architecture, serving as my primary home and the North American headquarters for Sterling Hydro Systems. To my parents, it was just the pool house where I stayed when I was in town. They had no idea that I had purchased the 2.3 acres it sat on back in 2020 when Arthur couldn't keep up with the property taxes. I let them keep the main house on the adjacent lot, but the guest house and the land beneath it was mine. Arthur stood up then, tapping a silver fork against a crystal glass. The crowd went silent, expecting a speech about legacy and the twilight of his years. Instead, he gestured toward a stack of manila folders on a mahogany table. "At 70, a man thinks about the future," he began, his voice booming with the unearned authority of a patriarch. "And Julian has a vision that just needs the right fuel to ignite." Julian beamed, and his wife, Cassandra, practically vibrated with excitement. They had been waiting for a handout for years. Arthur's next words felt like a physical blow to my chest. To provide Julian with the capital he needs for his new digital firm, I've decided to sell the guest house. The patio erupted in applause. Aunt Mildred cheered about supporting dreams, and Uncle Peter estimated the sale would net at least $200,000 in seed money. Arthur shook his head with a smug grin. Actually, the appraisal came in at $275,000. I stared at the folders. He had an appraisal. He had paperwork. Somehow, my father had invited a real estate agent into my home while I was traveling for work and had a professional valuation done on my property. That's when Victoria Thorne appeared. She was a shark in a tailored cream suit, clutching a leather briefcase with the logo of Pinnacle Realty Group. She wasn't just there for the party, she was there to close the deal. "The buyers are actually here today for a final walkthrough," she announced, gesturing toward a well-dressed couple currently poking around my backyard with measuring tapes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a deed registration alert from my property monitoring service. Unauthorized transfer attempt detected for 882 Silverwood Ridge. I stood up. My chair scraped against the stone tile, a sharp, dissonant sound in the middle of their celebration. "Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the rage vibrating in my marrow, "you can't sell that property." Arthur didn't even look at me. "Elena, I know change is hard, but Julian needs this." My mother chimed in with that signature condescension. "Honey, you only rent a room there occasionally. It's not like you own it." "I don't rent a room," I replied, stepping into the light. "I own the land, I own the house, and I own the permits." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush the birthday cake. Victoria Thorne's professional smile began to crack like cheap porcelain. "Is there an ownership dispute?" she asked, her eyes darting between my father and me. "There is no dispute," I said, pulling up my company's legal filings on my phone. 882 Silverwood Ridge has been owned by Sterling Hydro Systems since 2021. I am the sole proprietor. Julian stepped forward, his face turning a mottled purple. "Elena, stop it. Don't ruin my business because you're jealous." "Jealous of what, Julian? Your 3 bankruptcies?" I turned the phone toward Victoria. "This is a fraud alert from the county registry. My legal team was notified the moment you tried to file those papers." Victoria's face went white. She turned to my father. "Mr. Sterling, you assured me you had full authority." Arthur stammered, claiming it was family land, but the bravado was leaking out of him. "It was family land," I corrected, "until you couldn't pay the taxes 4 years ago, and I bought the deed to keep you from losing the main house. I let you stay here out of pity, not because you have a say in my assets." Uncle Peter scoffed. "Elena, you're a government clerk. Where would you get the money to buy an estate?" "I don't work for the government," I said, and the words felt like a long overdue exhale. "I own Sterling Hydro Systems. We design industrial water treatment plants for 6 different countries. Last year, our revenue was $3.2 million. Victoria Thorne was already on her phone, frantically Googling. "Dr. Elena Sterling," she whispered, reading my bio aloud to the shocked guests. "Founder and CEO? 7 patents? Technical advisor to the EPA?" Arthur sank into his chair as if the weight of his 70 years had finally caught up to him. "But you drive an old truck," he whispered. "I drive a truck because I spend half my time on industrial construction sites, Dad. But while you were planning to steal my home to fund Julian's vision, I was actually building one." The party didn't just end, it imploded. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't an alert. I put it on speaker. "Dr. Sterling, this is Investigator Marcus Vance from the County Fraud Unit," the voice boomed across the patio. "We flagged an attempted fraudulent transfer of your residence. Do you wish to proceed with an investigation?" The guests stared in horror. Victoria Thorne was already packing her briefcase, her hands shaking. "I need to withdraw from this transaction immediately," she cried. "Actually, Miss Thorne," the investigator's voice continued, "we'd like you to stay put. Attempted fraud involving a licensed agent carries automatic license revocation and criminal charges." Investigator Vance arrived 20 minutes later. He was a man who looked like he had no patience for family misunderstandings. He walked straight to the patio, ignoring the half-eaten barbecue and the expensive decorations. "Mr. Sterling," Vance said, looking at my father, "you signed a listing agreement for property you haven't owned in years. That's not a mistake. That's a felony." The buyers, the couple who had been measuring my windows, approached with pale faces. "We've already deposited earnest money," the woman cried. "You'll need a lawyer for that," Vance told them coldly, "because this is now a criminal crime scene." Victoria Thorne's career died that afternoon. Because she hadn't done the basic due diligence of checking the deed before listing the property, she was fired by her agency that evening and eventually lost her license permanently. My father looked at me, his eyes wet with a mix of shame and desperation. "Elena, please, we're family." "Fraud is fraud, Dad," I said, the same words the investigator had used. I signed the formal complaint. 6 months later, Arthur pleaded guilty to attempted property fraud. He received probation and was forced into financial counseling. Julian's business never even launched. Without the stolen capital, no legitimate investor would touch him until he produced an actual business plan. Today, the guest house at 882 Silverwood Ridge remains my headquarters. My father still lives in the main house, but things are different now. He doesn't make announcements anymore. He asks questions. He's finally learned that the daughter he dismissed was the only one actually keeping the family afloat. Success is the best revenge, but a legally binding deed is a very close second. What would you do if your parents tried to sell your house right out from under you? Tell us your story in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories of justice served, make sure to watch the video on your screen right now.